Welcome to Mind Ladder, the place where we take deep dives into ideas. In each deep dive, we explore powerful insights from best-selling books on habits, productivity, and personal growth. We're your guides, and we're excited to guide you through ideas that can change the way you think, work, and live. Ready to take the next step? Let's get started. All right, today we're taking a deep dive into fascinating excerpts from Charles Duhigg's book, The Power of Habit.
Yeah, it's a really influential one.
Definitely. Our mission today is to really unpack the science behind why we do what we do, understand the structure of habits.
And figure out how we can actually change them based on what Duhigg presents.
Exactly. So let's jump into part one, the basic building block.
Right, the core mechanic. And it's kind of startling when you first hear it. Duhigg argues that a huge chunk of our day isn't really conscious choice.
Yeah, he cites that Duke University study, right, saying something like over 40%.
Over 40%, yeah. Just think about that. Nearly half of what you do all day is habit.
It's massive. So if it's not conscious decisions, what is it? How does this autopilot work?
Well, he boils it down to this really simple, elegant structure he calls the habit loop.
Okay.
It's got three parts. First, there's a cue. That's the trigger, the thing that tells your brain, okay, run the automatic program now.
Got it. The signal.
Then comes the routine. That's the actual behavior itself, physical, mental, emotional, whatever it is.
The action.
And finally, you get the reward. This is what tells your brain, hey, this lip, it worked. Remember this for next time.
Cue, routine, reward. Sounds straightforward.
It is, but the examples really bring it home.
Yeah.
Like the story of Eugene, the guy with severe memory loss.
Oh, yeah, that was incredible. Remind us.
So Eugene had this devastating viral infection, wiped out his hippocampus. He couldn't form new memories, couldn't remember who he just talked to.
Couldn't even draw a map of his own house if you asked him.
Exactly. But, and this is the key part, he could still find his way to the kitchen when he felt hungry. He could open the cabinet and get his snacks. Every time.
Without consciously knowing how he did it.
Right. His conscious memory was shot. But the habit pathway, deep in the basal ganglia part of his brain, was totally intact.
Wow.
The cue was hunger. The routine was walking the specific path to the kitchen. The reward was eating the nuts. His brain knew the loop, even if he didn't.
It just shows how deep this stuff runs. It's not just surface-level behavior.
Not at all. It's neurologically embedded.
Okay, let's take a more everyday example. Fast food, maybe?
Yeah, Duhigg uses that one too. Most families don't, plan to eat fast food 3 times a week. It just happens.
It's a habit.
Totally. The cue might be driving home, super tired after work, kids screaming in the back.
Oh, I know that cue.
Right. The routine is pulling into the drive-thru.
Yeah.
The reward, quick, cheap food, kids are happy, you get a break, instant relief.
And you do that enough times.
And it becomes the automatic response to that cue. No real decision needed.
Okay, so cue, routine, reward. But Duhigg adds another layer, doesn't he? Something about craving.
Yes. This is crucial. He argues the loop isn't just driven by the reward itself, but by the anticipation of the reward.
The craving.
How did the Febreze story fit in here? That was fascinating.
Oh, yeah. So Febreze, initially, was a flop. They marketed it as this amazing odor eliminator.
Makes sense. Get rid of bad smells.
But it didn't work. Because people didn't crave the absence of a smell. There was no trigger, really. Success came when they repositioned it.
Oh.
They linked it to the end of a cleaning routine. Cue. Finishing cleaning a room. Routine. Spraying Febreze. Reward. A nice clean scent, a little feeling of accomplishment.
Okay.
But the craving they tapped into is the anticipation of that fresh smell, that little mini celebration after you finish cleaning. You start to crave that scent as part of the completion ritual.
Ah, so it's not just the result, it's the wanting the result beforehand.
Precisely. That craving pulls you through the routine. Think about exercise. You want to build that habit.
You pick a cue, maybe putting your running shoes by the door. The routine is the workout. The reward could be a smoothie you love, or just that endorphin rush.
Right.
Duhigg says you need to cultivate the craving for that reward. Let yourself anticipate this smoothie, or how good you'll feel afterwards. That's what makes it stick.
That anticipation bridges the gap between the cue and actually doing the hard part, the routine.
Exactly. He also mentions successful dieters often develop a strong breakfast habit. Cue, morning time, routine, healthy breakfast. And they cultivate a craving for a future reward, feeling good in their clothes, hitting a goal weight. That long-term craving helps fight off immediate temptations.
It's like a mental counterweight.
You got it.
Okay, so let's make this practical for you listening. Think about a habit you've got. Could be good, could be bad, doesn't matter. What's the cue? Like specifically what triggers it?
And what's the routine? What do you actually do?
Then what's the reward? What do you get out of it right away? But also, dig a bit. What's the underlying craving being satisfied there?
According to Duhigg, nailing that craving is step one to taking control.
Absolutely.
Okay, moving into part 2, we've got the basic loop down. But Duhigg talks about some habits being more important than others.
Yeah, he calls them keystone habits. It's a really powerful concept.
Keystone habits. What makes them keystone?
The idea is that changing one specific habit, a keystone habit, can trigger this cascade of positive changes across your whole life. It creates ripples.
Like knocking over the first domino?
Sort of, yeah. But it's more like it reorganizes other patterns. The Lisa story from the book is the classic example he uses.
Right. She was a smoker, overweight, and dead.
Exactly. And her keystone habit change was quitting smoking. But that single change didn't just stop there. It led her to start jogging to manage stress.
Jogging then changed her eating habits, her sleep schedule, how she planned her day, even her finances and long-term goals.
Yeah.
It wasn't just about nicotine. Quitting smoking became the catalyst that reprogrammed dozens of other routines.
Wow. One change. Massive ripple effect.
That's the power of a keystone habit. It creates momentum and spills over. He also applies this to organizations, like with Paul O'Neill at Alcoa.
The aluminum company CEO.
Yeah. When O'Neill took over, Alcoa was struggling. And his first big speech wasn't about profits. It was about worker safety.
Which probably seemed really weird to Wall Street.
Totally weird. But focusing intensely on safety became Alcoa's keystone habit. To improve safety, they had to understand why accidents happened. That meant improving communication between workers and managers. It meant fixing inefficient manufacturing processes that were causing injuries and defects.
So tackling safety forced them to fix other underlying problems.
Exactly. The focus on that one keystone habit, worker safety, unintentionally led to better communication, higher quality, increased productivity. It transformed the company's culture and bottom line.
That's fascinating. So a keystone habit works by creating, what do you call them, small wins?
Small wins, yeah. They're a key mechanism. These habits generate small, consistent successes that build belief and momentum. Think of Michael Phelps.
A swimmer.
His coach didn't just focus on swimming faster. He ingrained these pre-race routines, visualization, relaxation techniques. That became a keystone habit. It gave Phelps a sense of control, these little mental victories, before he even hit the water, which reinforced his discipline with diet, practice, everything else.
So the small win builds confidence for the bigger challenges.
Right. And he gives another example, the Library of Congress reclassifying books on Jay liberation. Seemed like a small bureaucratic change.
But it was a victory.
A small win that energized activists, showed progress was possible, and helped unlock more resources and political action. Keystone habits often work by generating these crucial small wins.
Okay, and this ties into willpower, right? The idea that willpower is like a muscle.
Yes, another key insight. Duhigg highlights research suggesting willpower isn't this constant, endless resource. It gets depleted.
Like that cookie experiment.
Yeah, the famous one. Students had to sit in a room with fresh cookies. Some were told to resist the cookies and eat radishes instead. Others could eat the cookies.
Poor radish group.
Tell me about it. Afterwards, both groups were given a really difficult, frustrating puzzle to solve. The students who'd used their willpower to resist the cookies gave up on the puzzle much, much faster.
Their willpower muscle was tired out from resisting the cookies.
Exactly. Using self-control in one area seemed to drain their ability to exert it in another unrelated task soon after.
So if I resist donuts at the morning meeting, I might find it harder to make myself go to the gym after work.
That's the implication. Your willpower gets fatigued. But, and this is the hopeful part, like a muscle, it can also be strengthened with practice.
How does that work?
He points to examples like Starbucks training their baristas. They have specific routines for dealing with stressful situations, like an angry customer, to help employees practice emotional regulation and self-control before it happens. It's like willpower drills.
Practicing the muscle.
And studies back this up. People who commit to small, consistent acts of self-discipline in one area, like tracking their spending daily or sticking to an exercise plan, show improved self-control in other completely unrelated areas of their lives. They eat healthier, smoke less, study more.
Even if those other areas weren't the focus.
Right. Strengthening the willpower muscle in one domain makes it stronger overall. It increases your general capacity for self-regulation.
That's really encouraging. It means small, consistent efforts can build a foundation for bigger changes.
It absolutely does.
Okay, another practical moment for you listening. What could be a potential keystone habit for you? What small change might create the biggest ripple effect? And think about willpower. How could you intentionally practice it, maybe with a tiny daily discipline, to start building that muscle?
Good questions to ponder.
Right. So, part 3. We've looked inside our own heads. But habits aren't just individual things, are they? Duhigg talks about them operating in groups, organizations, society.
Yeah, the scale gets much bigger here. Collective behavior is often driven by shared habits, social habits, and these can be incredibly powerful.
Like with social movements, he uses the Montgomery bus boycott.
He does. Rosa Parks' arrest was the spark, the initial cue. It immediately activated the strong social ties, the habits of friendship and close community activism around her.
Her immediate circle.
Exactly. But for the boycott to become a mass movement involving thousands, it needed something else. It needed what sociologists call the strength of weak ties.
Weak ties? You mean acquaintances, people you don't know that well?
Precisely. The pressure and expectation spread through these wider social networks. Participation became a community norm. Not riding the bus wasn't just about Rosa Parks anymore. It was reinforced by the social habits of the community, the peer pressure from neighbors and acquaintances. It became the expected thing to do.
So the movement grew by tapping into existing social connections and turning participation into a collective habit.
Largely, yes. It leveraged social pressure and existing community structures. He also gives the Saddleback Church example.
How did they use habits?
By organizing members into small, regular weekly groups. This transformed attending church activities from a series of individual decisions into a routine driven by powerful pre-existing social urges, the desire to connect with neighbors, to belong to a group. It became a social habit.
Makes sense, turning it into a routine based on social connection. But organizational habits can also be dangerous, right? The King's crossfire.
Oh, that's a truly chilling example of organizational habits gone wrong.
Yeah.
It was a disaster rooted in routines and what Duhigg calls truces.
Truces, like unspoken agreements.
Yeah, informal understandings about territory and responsibility. At King's Cross Station, ticket clerks had their routine just handle tickets. The safety inspector had his routine for reporting fires, which involved specific channels. Nobody's routine included, say, proactively sharing information about a small fire under an escalator outside their specific job description.
Everyone stayed in their silo.
Exactly. These ingrained habits, these turf protections, prevented crucial information from flowing. A small, manageable fire escalated into a deadly inferno because the organizational routines weren't designed for effective communication or shared responsibility in a crisis.
Following the routine led to catastrophe.
But then he contrasts that with Rhode Island Hospital. They faced issues with surgical errors.
What did they do?
They implemented a simple checklist and a mandatory timeout routine before every surgery. This new organizational habit forced everyone in the room, surgeon, nurse, anesthesiologist, regardless of rank, to stop, communicate, confirm key details, and voice concerns.
It created a deliberate break in the routine for communication.
Yes. It built a new habit that prioritized safety and information sharing, overriding potential hierarchies or old routines of silence. It shows organizational habits can be designed for good outcomes.
So it's about consciously designing the right routines. And of course, companies are trying to understand our routines all the time.
Oh, absolutely. The Target story about predicting pregnancy is almost legendary now.
It's kind of creepy, honestly.
It is a bit. They analyzed buying data, identified patterns, specific combinations of unscented lotion, supplements, cotton balls that strongly correlated with early pregnancy.
Things people buy when their habits start shifting.
Exactly. So Target could pinpoint customers who were likely pregnant, sometimes even before their families knew, and send them targeted coupons for baby stuff right when their shopping habits were most flexible.
Wow. Identifying habit shifts to influence future habits.
It's sophisticated stuff. The music industry does something similar with stickiness.
Right, analyzing which songs people don't turn off on the radio.
Yeah. It's not always about finding the song everyone actively loves. It's about finding songs that fit seamlessly into existing listening habits. Songs that feel familiar, comfortable, what he jokingly calls bath rock. They don't disrupt the listener's routine, so they stay tuned in, which is valuable for radio stations.
They play into our automatic preferences even if we don't realize it.
But all this, the automatic nature of individual habits, group habits, the way companies target them, it raises some really tough ethical questions.
Especially when habits seem to override conscious control, like the sleep terror case.
Brian Thomas,
Yeah.
killed his wife while experiencing a night terror, a state rooted in automatic brain functions, not conscious intent. Or consider pathological gamblers like Angie Bachman. Research cited by Duhigg suggests their brains react to gambling cues and cravings in ways that look neurologically similar to compulsion, almost like brain damage.
So where does responsibility lie? If an action is driven by a deeply ingrained, almost automatic habit or compulsion.
Is the person fully culpable? The legal system struggles with this. Sleep terror defenses sometimes succeed, arguing lack of conscious action. But for things like gambling addiction, despite the evidence of powerful biological drivers, the courts often still hold individuals fully responsible.
It really blurs the line between free will and automaticity, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. It forces us to question how much control we truly have when these powerful habit loops kick in.
Okay, time for reflection again for you listening. Think about the groups you're in, friends, work, family. How do social dynamics shape your habits? Are there unspoken routines or truces that maybe aren't helpful?
And how aware are you of companies trying to tap into your habits? Finally, have you ever felt a habit was so strong it almost felt outside your conscious control? It's worth thinking about these broader dimensions.
Okay, let's pull this all together in part 4. We've gone through the loop. Keystone habits, willpower, social and organizational habits. It's clear habits are incredibly powerful. Duhigg says they're encoded into the structures of our brain.
They are deep. But, and this is the really empowering takeaway from the book, they are not destiny. Just because they're deeply encoded doesn't mean they're permanent fixtures you can't change.
Understanding the mechanism is the key.
Exactly. Understanding the cue, the routine, the reward, and especially zeroing in on that underlying craving that knowledge gives you the tools, the levers, to start modifying the habit.
But he's realistic. It's not easy. It takes work, right?
Oh, definitely. It requires conscious effort, self-awareness about what you're truly craving, and, frankly, determination. Just knowing about the loop isn't a magic wand.
So what's the core strategy for change, then?
It boils down to keeping the cue and the reward the same, but consciously inserting a new routine. You get to identify the cue, figure out the reward the old routine delivers the craving it satisfies, and then find a different, preferably better routine that provides a similar payoff.
Like Tom, the guy trying to lose weight. He realized his afternoon snacking wasn't about hunger.
Right. His cue was often boredom or stress. The reward he craved was distraction or comfort. Once he identified that craving, he could experiment with new routines, like taking a short walk or chatting with a coworker that delivered a similar reward without the calories.
And Eric, the smoker who kept failing.
His mistake was just trying to stop smoking, white-knuckling it. Success came when he identified his cues and systematically replaced the smoking routine with a different one, like nicotine gum or quick exercises that address the craving behind the urge. You have to substitute, not just eliminate.
Makes sense. And those implementation intentions seem really useful here, the if-then plans.
Super useful. Planning your response in advance makes a huge difference, like that study with surgical patients.
The ones recovering from hip replacement.
Yeah. The patients who wrote down specific plans like, if I feel pain when I stand up, then I will immediately take my first step, recovered significantly faster than those who didn't make plans. They essentially pre-programmed their response to a challenging cue.
Taking the decision-making out of the difficult moment.
Exactly. It automates the new, desired behavior. And alongside these strategies, Duhigg really stresses the importance of belief and community.
Why are those so crucial?
Well, change is hard, and stress often triggers old habits. The examples from Alcoholics Anonymous are powerful here. People who succeeded long-term often found a strong belief, whether in a higher power or just in the possibility of change itself, and they embedded themselves in a supportive community. AA meetings provided routines and, crucially, support during tough times.
The group reinforces the belief and the new habits.
Yes. Studies confirm this. Having social support makes change more likely to stick, especially when life gets stressful. We're social creatures. Change is often easier together.
I liked the example of the teacher who taught the habit loop to her students.
That was great, wasn't it?
Yeah.
She had them analyze their own procrastination habits, identifying checking email as seeking a cookie, a reward for boredom. By understanding the loop and experimenting with replacing routines, they reported huge productivity boosts. It showed how empowering this framework can be when you apply it to yourself.
It really brings it full circle, doesn't it? Back to thinkers like Aristotle, who said we become good by habit, and William James, who called life a mass of habits, but insisted habits aren't destiny.
Exactly. Habits shape us profoundly, but understanding how they work gives us the power to reshape them. That's the core message.
All right, final application prompt for you. You've got the framework now. What's one specific if-then plan you can create this week for a challenging moment or cue? And how can you tap into your community or build your own belief to support the changes you want to make?
It's about putting the knowledge into action.
Okay, so wrapping up our deep dive into the power of habit. The big picture is that our lives are guided by this fundamental loop. Cue, routine, reward, all driven by craving.
We learned about keystone habits of small changes with big ripple effects and how willpower acts like a muscle we can strengthen.
We also saw how habits operate in social groups and organizations, shaping everything from movements to corporate strategies, and raising some tricky ethical questions.
But the most important point really is agency. Habits are powerful, yes, but they aren't chains. Understanding the mechanics gives you the power to rewrite them.
You now have that roadmap to analyze the automatic patterns shaping your days. What small change could unlock a bigger transformation for you?
And here's that final thought to leave you with. Since habits are so embedded in groups and systems, not just individuals, how could understanding the habit loop change how you interact with your family, lead your team, or view broader social issues?
Is there a hidden habit loop operating in a system you're part of, maybe at home, at work, in your community that you've never really seen clearly before? And what tiny intervention, what potential keystone habit might shift that entire dynamic? Something to think about.